Okay, so welcome to this live stream. Today I'm going to be covering Server, and specifically new features in Tableau Server, Tableau Online, and also Tableau Public. They're all part of the same sort of product line. And I'm going to be going over quite a few features today, actually. I think it's always important to bear in mind that a lot of the features that Tableau release in Tableau Desktop are also applicable in Tableau Online and Web Edit. So I'll touch a little bit on that. Just to give you an overview of the format for today, we've got quite a few things to get through. So I'm going to go over what's new in Tableau Server. We're going to look a bit at the new feature announced just a couple of days ago, actually, for Tableau Public, which is the Explore option. This is a really interesting feature because it's essentially an extension of Web Edit built specifically for Tableau Public. So we'll take a look at that soon. We'll then go into a demo of metrics. If some of you are looking at the panelist list, you'll notice that I'm actually in the call twice. The other person in this call is actually my phone. So I'll be sharing my screen on my phone and showing you how metrics works on mobile phones. But I'll first, build one in desktop, and then we'll go through that. A new great feature in uploading workbooks, reordering favorites, server admin views. This is sort of for the server admins out there. I don't know if there are any server admins on this call. If you're a server admin, maybe drop a note in the comments or drop me a message and let me know. And then the last feature we'll touch on is multiple analytical services. This is the ability to essentially add multiple services like R or Python servers for each specific site. So different teams can use different instances of these services for their own teams. So that means they can all have their own data science and machine learning setups within their organization. Now, before I do that, it's probably just worth highlighting some of the features in desktop that are actually applicable for Tableau Server and Tableau Online. The key thing to understand here is that when Tableau have been launching features over the last year or so, pretty much all the features have actually been available to Web Edit as a feature. And it's always the case that that's not necessarily the full capability that you get in desktop, but in most instances, the spirit of the feature lives on in the server product. The other thing to bear in mind is that server doesn't just mean Tableau Server. If you use Tableau Online, it's essentially the same thing. The difference between the two is that Tableau hosts Tableau Online on your behalf, so you don't have to worry about the computer that runs Tableau. You don't have to worry about security. You don't have to necessarily worry about things like backups, upgrades, and all these complications to do with drivers and data sources. That's all managed for you with Tableau Online. Tableau Server is essentially, a customized product where you manage all of that and set it up specifically for your organization and your business. And so all of these features are available on both services. Right, I'm going to hop out of the presentation. And essentially what I'm going to do is we're going to switch over to our meetup page. Before we dive in, it's always worth checking our meetup page. We've got a whole list of events available for you to join. There's obviously another one of these sessions next week where I hope that the live stream will behave. But if not, there's also an event tomorrow on Thursday. We do Thursday every afternoon, and it's free for people to attend. It's just part of our general sort of reach to try and get more people comfortable with Tableau whilst you maybe have a bit more time during the current crisis with coronavirus. Last week, what I did was I started on this particular page. It's a great page. It has all the new features and capabilities in Tableau 2020.2. If you scroll down, you kind of see the headline features, metrics, relationships. We went over that 3 weeks ago. Set controls, I went over that last week. And if you go down to the bottom, you get this nice little toggle that allows you to switch between features. So here you can see that when I switch between online and server, it's generally the same capabilities. The only additions are the features that are specific for Tableau Server, because that obviously gives you more options for customization. So we're going to go through some of these features today. And I'm going to do them in a slightly different order to what we have on here. But first, I'm going to start with Tableau Public. Let me head over to Tableau Public, and this is my own Tableau Public profile. I have an embarrassingly low amount of publications on this. I haven't published anything in a long, long while. But there's a really cool feature that allows you to explore another visualization through the browser. So let's just search for a colleague of mine, Ravi Mistry. You can see I did this earlier on. And when we hit enter, it will search Tableau Public for that specific username. And it will bring us all the results. And I'll just go into Ravi's profile here. And something you might do for your own sort of development and learning is you might browse other people's visualizations and try and understand how they built it, how did they get to this end result. And Ravi recently published this great visualization on the Google Mobility Report. If I just click view and hop into this, we'll be able to have a look at it. So this report generally looks at the UK, although Google have this data for many other countries in the world. And it's got a really nice technique here. You can see that Ravi somehow sort of created a general line for each of these data points on any given day. And each of these data points is essentially a region in the UK. So if I want to sort of tear this down and see how it's built, the first thing you have to do is make sure that you're logged into Tableau Public. And then if you hit the Explore Beta option, you'll just see it here on the top right. I'll just highlight that for you here so you can see it more clearly. You can see here there's this new button, and it's in beta still. It's still a feature that's being tested. But if you click on that, it will open up the visualization in WebEdit. And WebEdit has actually been available to Tableau Server and Tableau Online users for quite some time. But now it's available in Tableau Public. And we can actually go into the specific sheet. Again, I'm doing all of this in the browser. And we can actually check out how Ravi built this view. So I specifically want to interrogate, how did he get this line generated? Because this line doesn't exist in the data source. So I can see here that he's used a median calculation to build out this line. And I know Tableau well, so I can see straight away that this is a dual axis. So I can actually undo this dual axis option here just to show you that it's actually two separate charts overlaid on top of each other. And I might disagree with some of Ravi's styles and choices here. I might decide instead of going with black, I might just break theme and go with blue, and then go back and make that a dual axis. And you can see I'm just using it almost like I'm in desktop. It can sometimes be a little bit laggy just compared to desktop because that's native on your device. When you finish making changes, you can just go to File, and you'll notice you don't have the ability to save it because you can't edit Ravi's version of this workbook. That's his version. But you can save it as a new version. So I'm going to call it Ravi Inspiration. And I hit save. And when you hit save, there's a common sort of discourse on Tableau Public about authors being correctly accredited. What this does is it actually takes the author of the original post, right? And it credits them appropriately once you exit out of this view. So now if I go back to Tableau Public and this visualization, you'll see that it's actually technically published this to my profile. It looks exactly the same. You can see the line is now blue. And if I scroll down, you'll see here that it's referencing Ravi's as inspiration is. You can just see at the bottom, Ravi is the original author. And actually, if you click on that link and go to that specific page, then you'll be able to see Ravi's original creation. But this new version sits on my profile as my own version. And so if I go back to my profile, you'll see that it's available there. Now I actually have by default published state as hidden. So everything will be hidden, and then when I make it visible, it will obviously become available to everyone. So that's a really cool new feature on Tableau Public. It's going to be a great way of being able to sort of dissect what users are doing in their visualizations. Just if you go to the gallery, for example, and just browse some of the incredible visit of the days that have been available over the last week. It's a really good sort of source of inspiration, and you can start to dissect how visualizations are being built and even just have a go and play with it yourself. So that's pretty much the new feature in Tableau Public. Let's change tack now over to sort of, I think, the big feature in the product, and that is metrics. Now, metrics are a really interesting feature. If I just go over to my test instance of Tableau Server, I've actually got this through the beta testing process, so you can see here that it's a development instance. And you can see here that I have 3 metrics in my favorites, and this is what they look like. They're sort of really cool, interesting visualizations, as it were. When you click on them, you'll notice they present slightly differently to the typical chart in Tableau. They have sort of a big ass number at the top. That's typically known as a ban. And then you've got the sort of chart here that allows you to sort of scroll through the different dates and times and sort of see a general trend of what's going on. The next important thing to notice is you get the details of the metrics. So this really tells you about where the information is coming from, okay? So if I just sort of zoom in on this, you see a little bit more information. So you can see the author, how it was created, and the connected view is essentially the view from which this metric has been created. So this gives you a hint as to how metrics are created. We're going to go ahead and do this in a second. The other thing is the definition. So it tells you what metrics are actually being used. So if I just go down here, you'll see that it's using one measure and one dimension, sales and the date. And we're using the month variant of the specific date. Then you have some information about where it's published. In this case, it's published to a project called Metrics. And also you can see when it was last modified. So I actually created this a while back during the beta testing process. So how exactly are these built? Let's have a go at doing this ourselves. Let's go back to this 2020.2 release folder that I've got here. And let's just go to grid view so I can see some of the visualizations that I've got in my area. Now, if I go into the metrics tab, I don't think I actually have a workbook. Oh, no, I do. There we go. If we go to the Superstore, you'll see that I have several visualizations. And this is actually just a sample workbook that gets published, that gets inserted into Tableau when you install Tableau. So everyone has access to this workbook. You can publish it up to the server yourself and sort of follow along if you'd like to. And the key thing here is metrics requires some information on the visualization in order to work. You'll see that it's actually available up here at the top as a new option. It's hidden in the toolbar for users to use, and it works in a very similar way to alerts if you've ever used those. What you first need to do is you need to select a data point. If you don't select a data point and then select metrics, then you'll see that it asks you to select a mark first before you can actually start building one. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select furniture here. And when I select furniture, you'll see that this pane on the right-hand side populates. And now I get a little bit more contextual information about this particular view. You can see a couple of things. It's actually taken the number, which gives me a context of the total, but it's also drawing a line, which is a trend line over time. And the only way it can do that is by taking two measures. First of all, it takes the sales, and then it takes this date. And the date is taken specifically from the axis. You can actually see that here along the bottom. So it's actually getting some context from the visualization. It asked me to create a name. So let's just call this, let's not use what I've used before because I've already actually published a metric like this. So let's call this sales furniture demo. I can give it a description. And then you can actually specify the measures. Now, let's say you didn't want to use sales. You can actually switch this to profit if maybe that's what you're interested in, okay? But in this particular case, sales is the correct one. And then the other thing you can do is you can obviously change the location. Let's say I don't want to publish this to the metrics project. Maybe I want to save it in another part of the organization. I've obviously got the ability to do that here. So what I'll do is I'll just create this. And when it's created, it goes back to the visualization. You get this little green view, and obviously you can click on that and it takes you to the metric that you've just created. Now, this is all great, and I think most of you are probably saying, well, I could build this in Tableau Desktop. What's a really powerful thing here? Well, the powerful thing here is that a user can create this for themselves. And then the second element is that the user can then access this on mobile devices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to switch over to my mobile phone. Just give me 1 second as I do this. Okay. So now I'm on my phone, and you can see here that I've got Tableau Mobile available to me. I really hope no one calls me during this demo, so let's wait and see how this goes. So here we are. We're in the exact same Tableau dev instance of this Tableau server. And as I scroll across, you can see my 3 metrics that I previously created. But you can also see the new one that I've just created in my recent. You can see it here. It's this first item that I've just tapped on. Now I can obviously click on this number and I get this whole view which shows me my chart alongside my metrics. So it gives a little bit more richness to this picture. Now the thing I didn't show you previously is that on mobile devices you actually get a little bit more capability. On desktop we weren't actually able to see the comparison to previous periods. So let's hop into that and see how that works. This is the same view that we saw earlier on. It's a little bit more cramped because it's on a mobile device. I can obviously interact with it as I did before. This time I'm just using my fingers and touch to sort of navigate this. But at the very bottom here, you see this option to adjust and compare. And then when you go to this tab, you have the capability to choose a date range. So I can actually choose a comparison. You can see here at the bottom, I have 12 months and 60 months. This is slightly sort of random. I wish it had like, the previous month as well. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong options. The date range just shows you the full context of the data. So actually, if I choose the last 12 months and go back, you'll see there's far less data points because it's only looking back a year. The comparison is actually on the next one. So I can choose a comparison between the previous year and the previous month. And when I hit OK, that's what's generating the number here, just below the big ass number, the 25.9K. You can see here that in this particular month here in November, if I look versus the previous month in October, it's actually up 360%, okay? Because the previous month here, you can see it was a very low number, 7.43 thousand, yeah? So this is a really cool feature. The other thing you can do is if I go back and I go to my favorites, you'll see that I've obviously selected 3 metrics as my favorites. So you really start to see the value here. A user can go to any visualization, choose the things they care about, and then build them into their favorites so that when they get onto their mobile devices, let's say a phone, they have this really nice list of metrics. And if they name them and they're appropriately configured, then you get this really, really nice contextual list. I can actually switch between grid view and a list view. And the other thing that's really cool here is if I tap the number, I actually get a context of how it's tracking versus the comparison that I've set in that specific metric. Okay, so it's a really, really, really cool way of working with metrics. And you can actually even see percentage values, absolute values, and percentages again. So that's a really cool capability. I almost wish it was this easy to create, these kind of comparisons in desktop as it is to create them here in server. This should just be a feature in desktop. I don't know why it isn't. I'll be nudging developers to make sure that happens. Okay. So that's pretty much metrics in a nutshell. Again, just a reminder, these metrics live across both desktop and mobile. And on mobile, you get that enhanced capability to sort of interact with them and look at them in a really sort of interesting way. Now, the key thing to remember is that obviously the data sources that are linked to metrics need to be updated for them to actively work. So because they're linked to a connected view, you have to make sure that that data source stays updated. Otherwise, these metrics stay static. Okay. So let me stop sharing my screen and hop back onto my laptop. Which screen am I sharing? Am I sharing the right one? I am. So you can see here the connected view that I was referencing here, just on the right-hand side. That is actually the view that needs to be updated, and that's the view that maintains the context. Now, if I was to delete that view, this metric would also disappear. So it's an important mechanic to be aware of as a server admin. You need to sort of start thinking about, users are going to be creating assets of their own in server, and actually you can create these for users as well. They come with their own sort of set of permissions and capabilities. So you can sort of get this permissions view that you're used to available. So who can see them, who can't see them, who can interact with them, who can create them even. These are all permissions capabilities that you've come to expect with Tableau. So it's a really cool feature. I highly encourage people to sort of dive in and sort of explore how it works. I'll just take this opportunity to see if there's any questions in the chat. Oh no, I think we're all good. Let's just see. Are metrics available to both explorers and viewers, or just explorers like Alert? That's actually a really good question. In my instance of Tableau Online, I'm the only explorer, so I haven't actually tested that capability. I would expect this to be available to viewers if viewers wouldn't be able to create them specifically, but I would expect a viewer to be able to see the metrics if they've been given permission. The ability to create a metric there, that's an interesting question. I'll have to test it. I'll have to test it and get back to you. If you drop me a tweet, we can have a discussion about it. I'll find out after this webinar and I'll let you know. To create a metric, you must be a creator or explorer. There you go. Ryan's answered it. Perfect. Great community work there. Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that. I guess I'm always a creator or explorer in my instance. I never go into that in depth. Right. That's pretty much metrics. The next feature I want to cover is the ability to upload workbooks. Now, this is absolutely crazy. So if I just go back to the 2022 release, one thing that's always bugged me as a consultant is, let's say I've got a workbook on my desktop and I just want to publish it to Tableau Server, but it's a really big workbook because it's cumbersome. Maybe it's 30, 40 meg. It takes a while to sort of spin up when I open it. And I just want to publish it. Everything is inside of the workbook. Now, previously, I had to open the workbook in Tableau and then publish it. And that's probably, you know, a 2-minute sort of cycle to go through that. Now, what's really cool is in 2020.2, under new, you have the ability to create a new project, a new workbook, and this uses the web edit capability. But if I just highlight this new option here, if I can just get this cursor back up here, you can see that there's an option here that says Workbook Upload, okay? And this is a great feature. So now when you click on that, you have the ability to drag and drop a workbook into this specific location. Now, if I click choose a file, it'll open up the window, you know, your file explorer window on your machine. And in this case, I'm going to upload a really old workbook I built in 2016 about the Barcelona Marathon. I've run a few marathons in my life, and I decided to build a visualization about the Barcelona Marathon to help me pace myself. So I can choose the project that I want this published to. In this particular case, I'll just publish it up to the 2020.2 release folder. And then I can also add a description. And it's going to publish all the sheets. I don't get the ability to control that here. But show sheets as tabs is obviously an option that you might want to enable if you want the user to be able to see the tabs as they're navigating each sheet. So if I then click upload, now this is a fairly reasonable sized workbook. It's important to note there is actually a file size limit here. The reason I said 30 to 40 meg is because the file limit is actually 50 megabytes here. You can just see that here. So it can't be too big. It's got to be a reasonably sized workbook. But again, if a workbook is 50 meg, that's actually quite a big workbook. So I think that's quite a generous range. So you can see here it's published. It's actually faster than opening a Tableau workbook. That's what I find incredible. That sort of interaction of just hitting upload and then seeing the viz, it's faster than opening Tableau desktop in some cases. And it's a fully working workbook. It hasn't taken me to web edit view. I've just taken me right to the view where I can interact and sort of work with it. And again, you get all the capability of web edit. So in this particular visualization, I have the ability to change the units from miles to kilometers, and it changes the segments. I've got this, you know, tooltip capability here. Maybe if I click on a specific location, I can actually click on this tab and it opens up Google Street View, a map. So everything works like it should. It's a really sort of cool capability. And of course, with web edit, I can edit that view and sort of work with it like I want to inside of Tableau. So that's a really cool feature. I think for the first time, you can treat Tableau workbooks as files and Tableau Server as a place for storing those files with this upload feature. I fully expect that to turn into sort of a more interesting feature in the future. Think of it as almost like workbooks being stored in a location on Google Drive rather than being you know, a Tableau workbook, a data source, and some visualizations and some views that get published up to Tableau Server. Okay, let's see if we've got any questions on that specific feature. Let's look in the chat window here. Hoping to upgrade to 2022 in the coming few weeks. Any early experiences of how server admins might monitor what users are doing with metrics, and whether that begins to influence some of the workbook content or perhaps simpler mobile designs? This is a really good question. You definitely do get some capabilities with the ability to see what people are doing, because these metrics are obviously linked to certain visualizations and certain data sources. So when those, let's say I go into a metric, let's just go back into this tab. We're just kind of going back and forth here. Let's go to 2020.2 release. Let's say when I access a particular metric here, this is captured by the Postgres database. So the information about which metrics are being created, you know, who's accessing them, when they update, when they refresh, is all linked to a workbook. And so in Postgres, this is all captured and it's available for you to start working with in the backend. And my colleague Ravi's actually built a great viz that goes into what's captured in Postgres and how to get to it and the relevant tables. So with every release of Tableau, that database is actually enhanced. Now, I don't think there's an explicit sort of table called metrics, but it will treat these almost as views in a Tableau workbook, and they'll be named or linked to a particular workbook through sort of a common or foreign key, if that makes sense. So it's just an extension of the existing sort of capabilities there. It'll be interesting to see how these are used. I haven't really done enough sort of thought into how you could then analyze how metrics are being used. But they are definitely a much easier way of building interactions for mobile devices, especially when users can create them themselves, or when you as an explorer or an admin can create these on behalf of users and then just publish them like a bunch of figures like I have done here, to allow people just to track different aspects of their business. Okay. So that's two features. That's metrics and the workbook upload capability that I've just covered. I think workbook upload is actually going to be a really cool feature, especially for people who just want to move files around, or maybe you've got something in a shared drive and you just want to publish it up. It's a really nice way of sort of working with this. Hopefully in the future, when we get personal spaces and some sort of concepts of your own little sort of folder and space to do stuff, this will also make it much easier for more content to end up on Tableau Server, rather than having to need a license for Tableau to publish something up. You could actually just upload it and then use your Explorer license to start working with it directly in the view. Okay, the next one is one that I've actually wanted for a long time, and that is the ability to reorder favorites. Okay, if I go to my favorites tab, you'll see that I have 3 favorites. Very, very simple. Now, until very recently, you couldn't reorder these. So I could just pick one up here, and you can see that I can just drag it around and then drop it. And now sales furniture is the first option here, then this is the third. And I can actually move this to the back here and move it to the right-hand side. It's obviously being temperamental here, so let me try this instead. There we go, that's worked a little bit better. And so now it remembers these order. And the cool thing here is that it remembers the order even if you're filtering, okay? So let's just say I want to look at, let's see, profitability, that's in all of them. Maybe let's add some more favorites here. Let's add this overview, and let's add this route scout. Let's go, apologies for my dog that's barking right now. My Amazon delivery just arrived, so he decides to let me know. Let me just find more workbooks. Okay, cool. So here we have some more example workbooks. Let's bring Andy's Viz Vocab in there, the book of calcs, another Superstore workbook. So now if I go back to my favorites, okay, so it's brought in sort of a whole bunch of items in here, and you can actually see that it brought those in first. It actually worked in reverse order of how I brought them in. So now if I drag this over to the top, that's my first workbook. So now if I then search, let's say, sales, okay, it keeps the context of that order even when you search. So it's a really sort of important feature. Whatever sort of filtering and context that I'm doing, it actually keeps that order. It doesn't sort of rearrange it on you as you're sort of working with the search capability. So that's a really sort of nice sort of quality of life improvement to have on server and to make available to users. I think this favorites tab is actually going to become the homepage for most users, because the homepage itself is already, it's got the favorites sort of section up here. You can see that the order is maintained here as well. Recent is obviously something that's fairly new to Tableau, but it shows you the most recent items you've worked with. Favorites is going to start to drive the agenda of what people see on their homepage. So it's a really important thing to start to educate users, because even on mobile, it makes the experience much easier and much faster. Okay. The next set of features that I'm going to show you now require me to switch over to a Tableau server. Essentially, these are features that are specific to administrators and specific to managing a Tableau server. So in order to do this, let me just close these 2 tabs here. And then if I go to full screen view, let's hope you can still see this. I can see myself here. There we go. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to switch over to our Tableau server. The reason I've gone to this full screen view is I'm trying to obfuscate the server URL for security reasons. So you can see now we're inside of the Information Lab Tableau server, okay? And what I wanted to show you is some of the new views, admin views that we have available to us. So you can see here I've got the background dashboard. This is a new workbook. and I've got the stats for unused contents workbook, okay? So let's go have a look at some of this. Now, a lot of content on our Tableau server is essentially just demo content. It's not necessarily, you know, actual sort of content that you'd actually use. So we end up doing so many demos, and so much stuff gets published and then never looked at again. And so this view is a new addition to the admin views that shows you the stale content that you have on your Tableau server. And obviously you can filter this based on specific sort of prerequisites. So let's say I wanted to say that everything is specifically, let's say 15 days. Well, it changes the threshold across the whole workbook, and it goes away and recalculates how much of it is, you know, is stale, and then it sort of refigures out, you know, the proportions across the whole entire server. So you can see that small change didn't change much because a lot of our content is old and a lot of our content has recently been looked at. So this view is a really sort of nice addition. If I go back to site status, then I go to the background dashboard. These take a little bit of time to load because they're actually loading from that Postgres database that I mentioned before. You can see here that this is actually quite an interesting view. The reason it's got this sort of really big spike is we actually had a few technical issues over the weekend to do with our hosting. So we actually ended up getting a big spike of, you know, jobs waiting before they were able to run. So this view has actually been skewed a little by what happened over the weekend, but the vast majority of our jobs are successful. So you can see here, this sort of top section is mostly gray, and you've got this tiny orange section here. And so again, this view just starts to give you a little bit of context. Now, you could already have seen this kind of information. You just needed to work a little bit harder to get it, partly through Postgres, but also partly by using tools like Logshark to scrape the logs from Tableau Server, create some workbooks from that, and then build the views off the back of the data sources that generates. So it's a really sort of nice, I'd say, quality of life improvements to have these basic starters. But I have to say that these are basically starter workbooks. They're not exactly the go-to sort of versions of these that you should be using. You can build far more sort of bespoke and customized workbooks yourselves just by connecting to Postgres and working with the data that's available to you in the Postgres database. The next one is to do with analytical services. So if I just go over to manage all our sites, and then I go over to settings, and I go to extensions, you'll see this new option talking about analytical extensions. Now, what used to be the case before 2020.2 is that a Tableau server was only ever able to connect to a single analytical service. And by analytical service, I'm talking about R servers or Python servers, specifically used in instances where you want to do data science alongside Tableau or in Tableau using TabPy or you know, whatever other functions or calculations you might be using that are using those services. But you could only connect one to the Tableau server. And the issue there is that, let's say you have a finance team that does financial forecasting using a bit of Python or R, and then you have an analytics team that actually use a slightly different version of R or Python than instance, and they both want to be able to use items on Tableau Server. Well, they weren't able to. They had to sort of agree on a server or analytical service and then use that service across the organization. Well, with this, what you can do is you can enable the analytical extensions. Okay, and then if you go over to a specific site, I'll go to our demonstration site here and then go to settings there again. You'll notice this tab here that says extensions. And in this extensions tab, if you go down, you'll see this new area called analytical extensions. So now each site gets their own ability to add TabPy and Python or RServe servers here. I'll just highlight this here so you can see that. Each site gets its own ability to set its own analytical extensions. And this is a really, really cool capability because it does finally give a little bit more flexibility for those who are wanting to do data science. It's especially pertinent in large organizations. Let's say you run an enterprise setup with 6,000 to 7,000 users, and there's a little bit of data science activity in your organization. I doubt any two data science team are using the exact same version of R or Python. And so this allows you that flexibility to enable these for a specific site. You could even have a test instance in one site and the production instance in another site as well, which is sort of synonymous with the ability to do prod and dev using sites in Tableau. So it also gives you that flexibility as well in terms of testing new features and new code and new functionality before switching over to them permanently. Okay. So that's a really sort of nice addition to Tableau. I'll just bring up the chat window again, see if I've had any work. How will the workbook upload security model work? Well, when you upload a workbook, you have to have the ability to publish. So you do need, as an explorer, the ability to publish. If I just go back, let me figure out how to do this. Let me get to the right tab first. Here we go. Yeah, so if I then come out of full screen here. Here we go. So now I'm back on Tableau Online, and if I just move this out of the way. Let's say I go over to that Tableau workbook, the root scat that I just uploaded. Okay. When I published it up, I was able to choose a project to publish it to, and I chose to publish the 2020.2 release. Now I'm an admin on this server, and so I wouldn't have seen the ability to publish it up to a specific project if I didn't have the permissions to do so. And so that's still being decided by the Tableau server. In fact, if I was publishing from Tableau Desktop, I'd have the same challenges, okay? So here I'm at the project level of permission, okay? So I can see projects, I can see the workbooks, I can see the data sources and the data roles. And the nice thing here in 2020.1, they actually changed it. So I don't have to sort of go back out and go back in to see these permissions at these different levels. So the key thing is here, the ability to publish workbooks. If I don't have the ability to publish and create content on this specific site or even on the server, that upload option won't be available to me. Okay, so that still sort of persists throughout the sort of Tableau server. There's no sort of change to the permission model there, and I think it works really nicely. It pretty much works exactly as you'd expect. Upload and publishing basically work the same way. Okay. Okay, cool. So we're pretty much there. I think one advantage of using Zoom versus a live stream is that there's a little less lag. I normally have to wait a minute for questions and answers. That's pretty much it. I'll show you my little script that I've got here on the side. This is what I was going through essentially. I have a little list. And so this is pretty much all the new features in Tableau Server. And also Tableau Online and a little bit of Tableau Public. And I've pretty much covered all of these. I'd be curious to know if you've got any specific questions about the product Tableau Server, or maybe you've watched some of last week's capabilities on set controls and desktop. You know, those are available here in Tableau Online and Tableau Server as well when you're creating new workbooks. There's also a couple of other features over when you look at things like relationships that are also available here when you connect to data sources or publish up. In fact, if I just go to my Explore view and I go to data sources actually. I think I've got a few data sources. You'll notice a couple of things. I've got a couple sort of data sources for testing, but if I go to Superstore data source, it says this is live. I don't think it is. It's actually reminded me about a feature I haven't covered yet, so I'll do that in a second. Your data sources here, if I go to, let's start a new workbook. Your data sources here, when you connect to a new workbook, obviously you've got the same capability. So here you can see that relationships have been triggered here. This Superstore data source was created using a relationship between orders and returns. And so you've got some customer information here at the top, and you've got some other sort of bits of information as well that are pertinent to the specific data source. And so when you're publishing these up, unlike a blend where you couldn't publish up a blend to Tableau online or Tableau Server, you can actually just go ahead and work with those here. So if I just maybe bring in a region and I put customer in front of it, it's working those relationships to basically understand sort of what's going on. Okay, and so you can see here actually some of our customers have orders in multiple regions, which actually looks a little bit weird if you think about it, because typically you'd expect them to order from one specific store, but it might just be the store that that provides the product rather than the specific relationship between the two. Now, the feature that I didn't highlight are improvements to Ask Data itself. So Ask Data is sort of, I'm going to say it's often sort of well marketed and communicated by Tableau, but it's probably not used as much as it should be in organizations. And that's probably because it's still a feature that's being developed and it's still in testing. And it starts to use a little bit of machine learning and artificial intelligence, two very broad ranging terms, but it tries to use both of them to try and understand what you'd like to see. And the cool thing in 2020.2 is you can actually add your own questions to this questions to ask, which is kind of nice. So you get these groups of questions here. You can do basic data analysis, date and time, filters, and viz type, okay? And so these viz types here, let's say I add a particular question to this type. Now, what it's basically trying to get you to do is map your own sort of word or terminology to a pre-done sort of type of questions. And then what it's using those pre-done questions to go ahead and analyze the data in advance. So when you then ask the questions, it's more likely to know what you want to do. So if I just, let's just select bar chart here. Let's create that. I think we had line chart, scatter plot, and map already. Okay. So let's just go ahead and click on some of these. So let's say I click sum of cells. Okay. What it will do is it will go ahead and it will just quickly create an analysis on sum of cells using this specific data source, okay? And so this is the total sum of cells. Now I could say as a bar chart, which I just typed in as a pre-done question, and then hit enter. And it will show me the bar chart, okay? And then I can say broken down by country, okay? And it's doing a little bit of sort of analysis. Or what I should have said is broken down by state. So to correct that, I can just hit country and I can type in state or region. I think region's probably, let's just use region, okay? And it will go away and sort of analyze that. I think state is there. So let's try that again by state. There you go. Cool. So by region, by state. And so it's just using sort of natural language to build this sort of chart. So I can even, I should probably type it the American way, color by, let's say, subcategory. I'm probably typing this wrong, aren't I? It's a little bit sort of temperamental with spelling. And I think my spelling of color, maybe it does actually want the UK spelling. Oh, there you go. Or maybe that's Google. Let's see what happens when I type in color by subcategory. Okay, it brings in the subcategory, but it doesn't actually apply it to color in that sense. So maybe the term color by is not a capability that it's currently aware of. And that's why you've got this feedback sort of capability here. You can actually say, listen, I have a problem and I'd like it to be able to understand this question. And I think they're constantly improving this. But it's a nice way of quickly getting charts without having to sort of drag and drop, as it were. You can just start talking to the data set. Now, if I go back one, actually, if I exit this view, the other thing you can do with Ask Data is you can create roles, okay? So let's say I have a field here, okay? And I can click on this edit icon here, and what it does is it asks me some information about this particular field. So I can give it synonyms. I can be lazy and say maybe cat. Okay, so cat is one. Cat, maybe I can type in some sort of misspellings. Categories, in case someone does that. So if someone was to, you know, enter that, it would actually get that. So I should actually type them each and then hit enter. Categories. Let's just automatically do that. Okay. And so now if I was to mistype that, it would actually recognize this. And the key thing here, let's say that I have another field that also uses the term category. I can actually apply synonyms to the same field and then set it up as a data role. So I can say, I can set other synonyms. So I'll just do acronyms for these in case that's something that we use in our business. So let's just type in this. These are really bad synonyms. Tech probably makes the most sense here. So let's just hit tech and I'll just do office. Okay. And then if I hit this drop down, I can publish this data role for this specific field. So let's hit that, and I can say category data role. Okay, and you choose again somewhere to publish it. So these live within a specific place. So you might want to create a folder specifically for data roles. Hit publish. And so it takes information about this data source. It takes the metadata about the field, including the synonyms. And then what I can do is I can actually apply a different data role to this particular thing. So you'll see here that I've actually created some in the past. So anytime I use specific fields in my organization, I can actually just say, oh, this is the same field I've actually applied a data role for in the past. Hit category data role, hit apply, and now it's got that understanding. All the analysis and understanding it did before in that particular field is now available to it. Okay, so this is a really nice feature. The last thing you can do is you can remove some of these suggestions. So let's say you don't want to have this suggestion here. You can just hit edit across, in fact, and it will remove that suggestion. So people won't see that here in OS data, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's any other questions. Let's just see what we've got here. So question from Velvet Shade. I believe the challenges for our agency is it is a health record data that requires a ton of work to curate the data to prepare it for use with you. Okay, cool. Is that a common theme that you see with the lack of utilization of ARS data? So the sentiment of this question is, the issue with ARS data is that it actually requires a lot of prerequisite work. And it's one of those things with sort of a chicken and egg with machine learning where it can only get better with human input, but sometimes, especially when the technology is early, that human input is a lot of work. And especially when data sources change a lot, that can sometimes, cause a lot of challenges. The only instance I'd actually recommend you use ARS data are data sources that are, so fundamental to the entire organization that, thousands of people using them, if that makes sense, either through a workbook or, hundreds of authors using that data source in their own analysis as an author. So it's a really important thing to sort of think about. I wouldn't go, sort of investing time in ARS data for a lot of data sources because it is a little bit of work. But let's say you had a data source, let's say for argument's sake on weather. Let's just say your organization was about weather. Now, that would be a core sort of data set that everyone would need to use and understand. And in those instances, it maybe makes sense to, add a few acronyms, things that, your business might do or say in relation to a specific metric, because then it reduces that barrier. But I actually see this feature sort of growing into a more interesting feature in the long term, especially if you think on mobile devices where you don't necessarily have the ability to drag and drop the whole time. Alongside the capabilities around metrics, I think ARS data and metrics are a really nice sort of feature set that would work nicely on the mobile device that aren't as great on desktop and server, because you can just go ahead and do the same analysis, maybe faster if you know what you're doing. But I also see the use case differently here. ARS data tends to be something where I think maybe someone who's never built a chart in Tableau can just go in here and build a very simple view in here. So if I just type in sales by category as a table and hit enter, yeah, let's do that. Now, the ability to type that and then hopefully just get a table which shows category and sales is really cool. And you don't have to know Excel to do that. You don't have to know Tableau to do that. You can just type it and get it straight away. You can then come here and change that into something else. So you can look at it as a heat map, as a bar chart, if that's your kind of thing. And this kind of capability is sort of the magic of Tableau, right? This ability to just type something and have it do something for you that in any other piece of software would probably take a bit of time is where the magic really sits. And I think that is sort of the powerful thing about this. It's not great for power users who know Tableau very well, but it's probably great for people who never touched Tableau and this is their first time. Okay, what do you think of the feature? How do you think that worked as a sort of a feature set? Are there any particular questions from the audience that you'd like answered? I've got a couple more minutes before we close off. I have to apologize again for the sort of tech issues we had at the beginning of this. So big thanks to Sophie for thinking on the spot and getting the Zoom details out there. It's a good thing we use Zoom as a way of getting this out, because it did manage to get us out of a tricky spot. You can't very easily change the stream details on a YouTube stream either, because you have to set it up in advance. So big props to Sophie again for thinking on the spot and getting us out of that sticky spot. If you've got any questions, now is a good time to ask them. Otherwise, I think I'm going to be looking to close the session. The recording will be available a little bit later on, probably tomorrow, because we have to figure out how to get the recording out of Zoom, given the technical issues, but that shouldn't be a problem. We should be able to get that up. You will have seen that I've, Sophie shared some links to the folder where I keep all the demo content. Because this was actually about Tableau Server and Tableau Online, I don't have too much to share there, but you can obviously hop into your own Tableau Server. If you don't have access to Tableau Server, there's a really simple way you can do this. Obviously, Tableau Public has that authoring experience available to you. But the best way to do that is to just go to Tableau. If I just search Google beta Tableau, they have this page, and you can go to the pre-release page here and sign up. This is the actual pre-release page, but when you sign up to the beta itself, they give you access to this. Pre-release page, basically. So I think these are all the wrong pages, because the actual beta page itself is not well marketed, so it's not a link that's easy to find. What I'll do is I'll add it to the notes of this video. I think that's probably going to be the best way to show this off. But you can get access to the Tableau Online beta instance, just like me. And here we are, pre-release program. Let's just get this out of the way so we can see it more clearly. And so here you can sign up to the individual feedback programs, and then you can get you can get access to an instance of Tableau Online from which you can share. So yeah, Sophie's I think shared the link to the pre-release page, but to get to that, to get access to that page is a bit weird. You have to first sign up to the betas here. So each of these have a different sign up process. So I'll be sure to put this in the link. It's tableau.com/get beta, and I think it just forwards you to the relevant country. And then once you get access to that, you can just get Tableau Online like I do here, and you can just get access and start working with this in your own instance. Thank you very much for your patience today. I have to say, it's not easy when the details of the stream are changed on you in the last minute, but thank you for engaging. Thank you for getting involved and asking questions. For those of you who've joined, lots of different countries around the world, India, America. We even had, I can't remember the country from last week. We had people from so many different places, and it's great during this sort of current crisis to see people coming together and sort of getting involved in new experiences as well. Next week, I'll be back online covering the very last session on this. So the slightly smaller event in the sense that we've only got Tableau Prep, and Tableau Prep only has 2 features. So that will be a slightly shorter live stream. But what I'll probably do is I'll give people more of an introduction into Tableau Prep and how it works as well. After we've gone through the new features for those people who are new, we'll make a little event out of it and try and make the most of it. The next event we have is actually tomorrow. Thursday trainings at 3. We do this every single Thursday. It's free. There's actually Tableau Prep training there. Come in, get some intermediate dashboard experience, understand level of detail calculations, and also work with Alteryx if that's something that you're also familiar with. You can sign up on our meetup page, meetup.com/letstalkdata, to get involved. Next week I'll be doing the, if I go to our meetup page just here, and you can see the list of events. You can check out some of the new events we've got. So next week will be the Prep and Data one. Already 55 attendees. It's a great community, actually. I love the people who join our events because they come from lots of different walks of life and they ask really interesting questions about their organization. So if anything, it's a great place to network and meet other people who have the same challenges. And it's a community we started about a couple of years ago, and it's already grown to nearly 4,000 users. So I highly encourage you to join and sort of get involved with some of our events that we've got lined up. That's pretty much it. Thank you for joining the stream. The recording will be up very, very soon. And thanks for watching.